So when I sold to the sales silo, that kept happening. And so the infinity effect is being actually written to the CEO and the board saying, there's an entire corporate culture that you need to install. And there's a sales part of it, and that's what my last book was about. But the corporate culture is how everybody in the company sells. Everybody who touches the customer is not there to just stay in your lane, do your job, and get back to the office. When you're there with the customer, your job is to propel them, power them, accelerate them through the ownership side of that infinity loop.
Welcome to Season 4 of the Manage Self, Lead Others podcast with Nina Sunday, CSP, for experienced and aspiring people managers. This show helps you explore ways to become a more intentional leader. Each episode, host Nina Sunday speaks with some of the brightest business minds on the planet who share a passion to elevate and transform team culture. Workplace culture hides in plain sight. Is yours flourishing? Join the movement to make your workplace a better place to work. Are you ready? Because it's time to manage self, lead others.
This episode, we're speaking with Mark Boundy. I'm so excited about his book, The Infinity Effect. I've just got the summary, and the summary is so rich and it's a good entree into the main book. So get yourself a copy of The Infinity Effect. Connect with Mark Boundy on LinkedIn. If you're a CEO, COO, CFO, get this book, Sales Manager, and get your team involved. Inspire critical thinking in the team, and that way you'll have better customers, you'll all become elite sellers. Welcome, Mark Boundy, my friend from C-Suite Network.
Nina, what a pleasure to see you. Thank you.
So what is an infinity company?
So the idea of an infinity company is that your customer's journey that we talked about, that customer experience journey, is a never-ending infinite loop. And like the symbol for infinity, which is a figure 8 turned on its side, imagine that in front of you, and the left-hand loop of that figure 8 is the customer making a buying decision from status quo doesn't work. Yep, status quo doesn't work. Why? What about it doesn't work? What could I do about it? What are the options? Which one of those options do I choose? Now I'm going to pull the trigger. That's the customer's buy journey. The customer's ownership journey is the right-hand side of that loop. And that is, now I'm going to receive it. I'm going to install it. I'm going to integrate it into my systems. I'm going to train myself. I'm going to measure the results. And I'm going to figure out what else I can do with this great piece of equipment or this great solution or with this client, with this supplier that gave me such a great experience. And so that customer journey goes from beginning to beginning to beginning. Yeah. And remember, your customer your customer doesn't love buying. They don't love spending time away from what they do to host salespeople. That whole left-hand side of that loop is them putting up with you. And the only reason they put up with you is in the promise of achieving something great on the right-hand side of the loop.
And sometimes the person doing the asking is just following someone, has been delegated the task from higher up and they have no skin in the game. They don't really care. It's like, I just have to go and get all this information.
Yeah. And so it can be very distracting and very simplifying and oversimplified. And so the customer focus is when you're just trying to pay attention to your customer. In the infinity loop company really tries to understand the customer's hopes, their fears, their jealousies, their aspirations, and try to understand and help them deliver great outcomes. What we do as companies is we take every silo that helps operate the customer and helps actualize the customer or deliver services to the customer. We give them inwardly focused KPIs. When we go from selling something to installing something, the installers don't know all the stakeholders who contributed to the buying decision, they don't know what any of the stakeholders are trying to accomplish. What they install to is a statement of work or a design,
Right, right.
a dry document. And the salespeople in, a lot of my clients have bought huge expensive sales training, and they bled from the ears getting their salespeople to understand every stakeholder and what every stakeholder is trying to accomplish. Then they win the deal and they throw that stuff in the can. They don't give that as the context to the installers, to the people who are trying to make
yes,
the customer's
true.
dream come true.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that gap. I have seen that gap. Absolutely.
And and when you've got that gap, you've already killed the momentum with the customer. The customer's whole point of dealing with you, they're excited right then. That is when they are the most
they're
excited
listening to
about this
me.
break, right? And then suddenly you start ignoring what everybody was asking for.
Right, right. Well, that's, to me, what you've just said, to pass on the information to the installers or the implementers is common sense. But anyway, it's uncommon. You make a
Yeah.
distinction between the seller journey and the customer journey, and not a
Yeah.
lot of companies do that.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Let me just ask your audience a question. It's a trick question. Who at your company decides that you're going to make the sale? The answer
Well,
is
the answer is the customer.
exactly. So that customer's buying journey is the only process that
I
decides
mean,
whether
I've got a big deal riding at the moment, but the power's all in their court.
exactly. And so the most important process in your entire company takes place outside of your company between your customers' ears.
Mm.
That process is the process that drives your entire company's success or failure. And
So
if
you
you're,
talk
yeah,
about the
go ahead.
customer focus is a low bar to aim for. So how so?
Yeah, we talk about being customer focused and listening to the customer, but that's what the customer asks for, what the customer wants. And customers don't know your product, and they don't know your business, and they don't know your category as well as you do. And
Yes.
there's research over and over that customers self-inform, which means they under-inform. And so when they come in and finally ask the sales teams to come in and make a presentation, all the sales teams ask them, what do you want? What are your requirements? What's keeping you up at night? And the customer only knows to answer what they know. And so all the top 3 sales teams that are in the finalist presentation all present the exact same proposal with a different logo on the front cover because
Well,
they asked the same questions, which is, Mr. Customer, what do you know that you need?
well, that usually, okay, there's a difference between knowing what the solution is and asking what are the problems that we can then come up with a solution.
Sure. Well, the salespeople ask, what are your problems? And they ask that what are your problems question, and the customer only knows to answer the problems that they came up with when they were self-informing. If you know your customer in ways that they don't know about themselves and you understand things about the market, you can ask them, did you ever think about the risk that this is, right? I had a client that sold lab equipment for the hospital, and the hospital wanted to know how many tests you can take and how fast the tests take and what are the reagent costs and blah, 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 blah. But they didn't know that their test was a little more accurate. Well, they knew that, but they didn't know to go to the chief risk officer at the hospital to say, how much are you spending on misdiagnosis from that risk every year?
Oh, gee whiz, that requires a great deal of critical analysis and root
Yeah.
cause analysis.
And business acumen.
Yeah.
I know when my product conducts this test more accurately, the likely business impact is going to be over in the legal and the risk department, not in the clinical department.
So
But yeah,
we need a lot more which means statements at the end of, you're having this problem, which means, and now the sales representative has to think, what could be the unintended, unobvious consequences of that? Is that
yeah,
right?
the downstream effects send tentacles all through your customer's company. And being customer focused is simply the way most companies settle for it is simply, I'm going to ask you what the problems are, and you're going to answer the problems that you know you have, not all of those second and third order problems that you don't know you have. And if the salespeople or nobody in the company has got any greater sales acumen, then everybody sells the exact same
Mm.
underwhelming solution.
So obviously you talk about asking diagnostic questions, and I do too. But then there comes a point where you say, well, how do you open up the conversation? May I give you my perspective on this? Or, is there a way to sort of lead into that?
Yeah, the other customers like you have found this to be true. Or had you ever thought about this? Or yes, that sounds like a problem. And in fact, it seems like when that problem occurs over here in this area that you weren't considering, this probably crops up. Have you ever talked to those people over there?
So it seems to me now I have to go back to all my diagnostic questioning and go, create a little template for myself. When they say this, these are the possible unintended consequences or unintended ripple effect that can happen. I really have to start thinking about the ripple effect of their pain points.
Exactly. Because everybody who's selling against you only knows the same pain points. And
Yeah.
so everybody's selling to the same pain points and everybody's selling, therefore, they're selling the same solution with a different logo on the front cover, as I said.
Mm.
If you understand the customer's business and you've been in business long enough, you can look at the customer's business a little bit like a mechanic and say, when this is
Yes.
going wrong, I know that there's got to be something over here. The book is about 18 different ways that the entrepreneurial company and the infinity effect company are different. And
Right.
so at the end of each of 18 chapters, I ask a question, how do you do this? And you give yourself 1 point for the entrepreneurial company answer and 5 points for the infinity effect company. And so you can grade yourself from 1 to 5.
Oh, yes, I saw
And
those. Yes.
and if you want to move higher on that scale, I have a bunch of tools. And so in 18 chapters, I quote, at the end of each chapter, there's 2 or 3 tools, but some of them are used multiple ways and multiple times. There is a prevailing wisdom in the world. And I sarcastically in a blog post the other day called it the sales industrial complex. So all of the sales training companies in the world buy into the idea that you go to market through this system that was described in a book called the revenue generation machine. Is basically how salesforce.com sold. And so we have sales development reps who just make outbound calls to get people to go through a demo. And there's inbound inside sales that kind of do the same thing. And then there's a demo specialist, and then there's a closer, and then there's an account manager. So we got hunters, we got farmers. And so we take all of the skills in that entire sales arc and we break them apart into different specialties.
Division
And
of labor.
right, we divide the labor.
Or even like the conveyor belt. Everybody does their little thing along the way.
Exactly. So if you're the customer and you feel like a widget on your customer's conveyor belt, that's exactly why. And I'm not saying that that's the wrong way to do it, but there are about 19% of all business to business companies in the world would welcome a salesperson at the very early, trying to understand my needs stage. Like that's before I even generate options.
Yeah.
Before I'm even generating options, what is my problem here? and they would welcome a salesperson 19% of the time. And another 30 or 40% would still a little bit after that, but still very early. I'm trying to understand and set my needs. And so those customers on that end of the spectrum where they are willing to engage your salespeople early, right? And the sales industrial complex is adamant that customers go through 60% of their buying process before they talk to a salesperson.
Oh.
That's true for half of them, but like a quarter to a third of them are willing to have a a trusted expert salesperson.
Mm.
And so the characterization of those companies that would welcome one are whatever I'm buying is new to me. It's
Yes.
new to my company. It's risky to me, each of the stakeholders. It's risky to the company. It's complex organizationally. That means when we buy it, we're going to have to integrate a whole bunch of different operations and a whole bunch of different silos around a company, or it's complex technically. So the more of those that you have and the more extreme they have, the more likely it is they want a trusted expert. And if you are going to those customers with a sales puppy, sales development rep who's offering demos of the greatest system in the world, that customer probably thinks, I would love to have a trusted expert help me understand my situation, but I can see it's not your company. How about if, right? How about if once I know what I want and I need a third bid, so because my purchasing tells me I need a third bid, I'll know by that time I'll know who I want to buy, but I'm always happy to have you give me that third bid so that purchasing gets off my back.
I know.
Happy,
I've been on the
right?
receiving end. Initial converse or initial request, and I could tell I'm the third quote.
Yeah. And
They won't even
so,
talk to me.
yeah, exactly. So that 10 question survey is a survey that helps you understand, am I one of the companies? Am I the kind of company that needs to go to market with the SDR, the sales specialty, break it down, so assembly line route? Or do I need to go to market with trusted experts and trusted expertise that understand my customer's business and that go to market as trusted experts?
What do you think is the overarching benefit or way that a sales manager, probably this is a sales manager's book, right? Or a very keen SDR that goes, we need to change what we're doing, who wants to then advocate it to the enterprise?
Well, Nina, that's the greatest question of all. You just didn't know it. My prior book, Radical Value, was really written towards anybody in the sales silo on how the sales process works and how value selling works, with a shout out towards marketing and product managers because they're adjacent. And I had clients hiring me so that, one big company hired me to sell value so their salespeople could stop discounting prices so much.
Right.
And I said, well, all right, we're starting to do that. Selling value means selling an outcome. So that means once your salespeople have sold an outcome, your company is going to have to deliver the outcomes that were sold. So let's make sure we align those.
I see.
Okay. So
so you've got internal politics you have to traverse.
So when I sold to the sales silo, that kept happening. And so the infinity effect is being actually written to the CEO and the board saying there's an entire corporate culture that you need to install. And there's a sales part of it. And that's what my last book was about. But the corporate culture is how everybody in the company sells. Everybody who touches the customer is not there to just stay in your lane, do your job, and get back to the office. When you're there with the customer, your job is to propel them, power them, accelerate them through the ownership side of that infinity loop.
It requires
we need
an across the board acceptance that this is the way we do business now.
Yes. And so we have to redefine their jobs, right? Customer service, your job isn't to get 19 people an hour to stop complaining. Your job is to stay on the phone as long as you can, to create an enthusiastic emissaries and evangelists for our product.
Exactly.
And I don't care how many an hour that takes.
That's right.
Make sure that installer knows it's not the statement of work, it's the business outcomes. You're not done installing until we're on track to making those outcomes real.
Is there a way? I mean, I've worked out a ROI statement that I can include in an action plan or proposal. I'm not sure they even read it or understand it because I use the gain minus cost divided by gain. I think that's the formula.
Yeah.
Is there another formula?
I don't use an ROI formula. I use how much value. So
yeah. Okay.
For that lab equipment, we will say, how much do you spend on that risk every year? And they say $5 million. And then you ask the clinicians and that risk manager, how much do you think we could reduce those claims by if we use our solution? And they say 10% or maybe as high as 20. I said, well, let's just take then you say, well, then let's just take the 10% times $5 million. That's $500,000 per year in value. And my price premium is $80,000.
Right.
So when you've gotten the customer to say those things back to you, that's not your ROI statement to them. That is their ROI calculations. You made that ROI calculation be done in the customer's mind. You didn't barf it in front of them and hope they believe it. Two completely different things.
That is probably, for me, the most succinct and important message of this entire episode, Mark.
That is the fundamentals of value. Value only exists in your customer's mind.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If you barf your value at a customer, you don't know what happened between the customer's ears.
All right, well, that's fabulous, Mark, and I really think that this is a book that anyone that leads a sales team or anyone leads a company or is a senior leader, chief operating officer, CEO, CFO, get this book and you'll start to see. I felt like I had just entered the fifth dimension after reading your summary, and I'm honoured. Thank you, Mark Boundy.
Thanks, Nina.
We've been speaking with Mark Boundy, the value guy. He helps companies understand value and to become an elite selling company. Mark is a pricing hawk who's learned that dropping price to increase demand doesn't work, and it is possible to sell more at higher prices to more satisfied customers at the same time. This is the Manage Self Lead Others podcast. My name is Nina Sunday. Bye for now.
Nina Sunday CSP is on a mission to help leaders transform culture. Nina Sunday travels from Brisbane, Australia to facilitate half-day or full-day workshops at your location anywhere across Australia. For a list of Nina's topics around leading people, productivity and communication, go to brainpowertraining.com.au signature programs to request a tailored proposal. To book Nina Sunday CSP to speak at your conference in Australia, New Zealand, Asia or internationally, head to ninasunday.com for details.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.